Good afternoon. Today I will be presenting the analysis of an interview of the Today Show of Philippa Hamilton, a former model who was fired for not fitting certain requirements. In the interview, both Philippa and the host used different techniques to persuade the audience about the influence all these events have on young girls that look up to people like her, like the models. They explain that society and the media have certain expectations for women, and these are a very bad example for teens. In the fashion industry, shape and size is the most important thing, and throughout the years, the expected size becomes smaller and smaller, which could have been one of the influencing factors for Philippa's dismissal. First of all, as stated by the host says, Hamilton's dismissal will be one more negative influence for young women and their perception of the ideal body. Many women and young girls who look up to people like her may get the wrong idea on their self-image and what they should look like in order to fit in society. The fact that she is, and while working with Ralph Lauren, always has been a very thin woman and still was dismissed from the company, it is very sad because it shows how even top models need to fit into certain requirements and expectations in order to stay in the industry. Young girls and women may believe that there is an ideal body and that causes many problems in them. For example, this can be a very influencing factor on the thousands of girls that are suffering from eating disorders and like anorexia or bulimia in order to fit in society's beauty standards. And they do this and it can really like affect like their emotions and their personality and like their self-body. Also, when the host says, in recent years, the modeling industry has come under fire in the debate over what's too thin. Even Self magazine, which promotes healthy lifestyles, airbrushed Kelly Clarkson to look thinner. Here, the host gives a very good example of what is actually going on. The host mentions the case of Kelly Clarkson and uses irony to convince the audience. Kelly Clarkson was photoshopped on the cover of Self magazine, and this Photoshop was done by a magazine that actually promotes a healthy lifestyle, which is very contradictory because it shouldn't matter the beauty standards that are in society, but like the way people feel inside. The industry promotes negative idea of beauty standards that can greatly impact the way of thinking of many young girls and women. Also, we can see evidence of the model talking and her perspective on the case. She says, I consider them my second family, of course, so I was very hurt about this, and I think it's not a good example when you see this picture of every young woman and they're gonna look at it and think that it's normal to look like that when it's not. And here we have Philippa giving her own point of view of the situation, and at the same time, she is making the audience feel empathy and pity for what she was going through. And she explains that she had worked with the company for many years and she felt like they were her second family. And finding out that they don't want her anymore, it can be very hurting. And also, she accepts and admits that these beauty standards promoted by the modeling and fashion industries are not a good example for young girls, and it can make these girls believe that it is normal to look that way. Later on, the model states that her opinion, and she says, because I saw my face in this super extremely skinny girl who is not me, and it makes me feel sad, and it makes me think that Ralph Lauren wants this kind of image, and it's not healthy and it's not right. And this quote is also very persuasive because the fact that she is a model and that she has been inside all these industries makes her point of view very reliable and convincing that it is not right to look that way and it's not healthy. So little girls and other women and young teens, they can like get convinced that since they're role models just like her, that she's a top model, says that like it's not normal to look that way, so they could like believe, and it can convince them that it's not like a normal way to look like. And in order to look that thin and the way these companies want you to look like, you have to be very careful on what you eat, meaning eating very small quantities and making a lot of exercise, which is also not very healthy for young girls or women. Also, it is very shocking to see this happening due to the fact that this model Felipa, she's extremely thin and beautiful, which makes the audience realize that these beauty standards are completely wrong because what these industries want is something abnormal and alien-like, to say it that way, and it's totally wrong for these people to think that. And to conclude, throughout the interview, both the host and Felipa use persuasive techniques to convince the audience that everything they see on media, it's not like what it looks like, and they should not believe that these beauty standards promoted by these industries are not correct. And they use techniques like irony and the use of empathy to make the audience sympathize, like when Felipa says that she feels very hurt that the company did that to her. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. Today I will be presenting and analyzing an interview from the Today Show, interviewing Felipa Hamilton, a Ralph Lauren model that was fired from her job because she was said that she was too large and she had the inability to meet the obligations of her contract with us, so said by Ralph Lauren. And this was something very insulting to her because she states that she did meet the obligations of her contract and she doesn't know why she got fired. Also, they talk about the magazine cover that was published, published, and she was in the cover, and that she was extremely photoshopped, and she looked abnormally thin. And the interview shows persuasive language because we can see many examples of the interviewers and the model that states talk about how today we can see how people are influenced by society, and that we should not believe everything that is shown to us, like models in cover pages of magazines, because those models are extremely photoshopped, and this is an example of one of them. But people look forward to these models influencing society that is a requirement to look like this. First of all, the model states that she was dumped by Ralph Lauren because she didn't fit into a certain clothing. And we can see this quote is very persuasive because we can see that the company Ralph Lauren uses it as an excuse to social media and people that the model was dumped. The model was dumped because she didn't fit into some clothes. But what clothes? Society doesn't know the size of the clothing that they were using, and the model in the interview says that she did not know what Ralph Lauren was talking about because she claims that she doesn't know what clothing she didn't fit into because she says it's not true. Reporters state that her body looking abnormally thin after the model in the cover of the magazine. After the model was fired, Ralph Lauren released a magazine and the model was in the cover of the magazine, but the magazine was extremely photoshopped and she did not even look normal. Reporters after seeing this said that her body looked abnormally thin, which is true. This magazine cover was only released in Japan, but still the model was very angry at this. This quote is persuasive because it is informing society that there is a lot of Photoshop used while editing pictures of models, and this was a wake-up call to everyone that it is not normal and important to be skinny. It is not even healthy, that skinny. It also shows how some companies exaggerate when photoshopping. And the reporters also say grotesque and makes her look like a cartoon. This was not to insult the model, but to inform society how these types of modeling companies may exaggerate with Photoshop. This is a huge problem because many people look forward to these models, and the image the company gives with this magazine cover is not healthy for the minds of the people. This is persuasive in order to show people that they do not need to depend on these pictures and be happy with the normal body they have. Ralph Lauren said this to the model: "We're terminating your services because you don't fit into the sample clothes you need to wear." What people think about this. People will think that if that model, which looks really skinny, does not fit into that clothes with to that those clothings, and how will they ever fit into the size of those clothes? This is not good for society, and it is dangerous for young women who want to look like a model because they can harm themselves and their health trying to look like this. And even though the picture is obviously not normal at all, the model, when she saw this comment, she did not even know what sample clothes they were talking about. And this shows people and informs them that not even everything that companies say are true, and things like this should not be published because people get influenced by it. The model, farther into the interview, states it is a negative influence for young women and their perception of the ideal body. This one is the most persuasive phrases in the entire interview because the model is stating that this horrible publishment done by the company gives negative influence and view to young women and how they think of their bodies. Women may think that to look like the picture is gonna be normal, but it's not. The model was the most offended one with this because they discriminated and insulted her body, image, and career as a model. This makes women that think that their bodies are not normal when actually the picture from the model isn't normal. And Felipa the model states, it is not a good example when you see this picture. Every young woman are going to look at it and think that it is normal to look like this when it's not. Like I said, many women depend on this, and they will think it is normal when actually it is everything but normal. To conclude, the message that is given to us based on the magazine cover and the reasons Felipa Hamilton was fired gives people the image ideas, like reporters said, based on what they understood. You have to fit into the clothes to get the job, and the models get smaller. What they mean that models get smaller means that throughout time, models have been getting skinnier due to the requirements and the new ideas that society has developed. This is why this interview is persuasive, because it informs people that what these businesses do, like Photoshop, and what they require for you to work there is not normal. And when I say that it is not normal, I mean that everyone should be happy with who they are, and these pictures in magazines wouldn't be published that way, making it more important for people to stop depending on these things. And to conclude, Felipa states, Ralph Lauren wants to have this kind of image. They sponsor these pics and healthy women, and it's not. This means we women need to stop this, make the world view what is normal, and make everyone appreciate their bodies and who they are.